President Trump urges swift passage of coronavirus relief bill.
特朗普呼吁迅速通过冠状病毒救济法案。
March 25.
2020
President Trump speaks during the daily briefing on the novel coronavirus at the White House Wednesday. Mandelnan AFP via Getty Images hide caption.
特朗普总统星期三在白宫每日关于这种新型冠状病毒的简报会上发表讲话。
Toggle caption Mandelnan AFP via Getty Images Mandelnan /
法新社盖蒂图片社。
President Trump speaks during the daily briefing on the novel coronavirus at the White House Wednesday. Mandelnan AFP via Getty Images updated at 7:13 p.m. ET.
更新于美国东部时间下午7点13分。
The White House's pandemic task force convened another briefing on Wednesday afternoon amid a tense denouement for legislation aimed at helping an economy plagued by the disaster.
周三下午，白宫大流行病特别工作组召开了另一场简报会。紧张的结局是指在帮助因灾难而陷入困境的经济的立法。
Last-minute objections on Wednesday threw the status of the bill into uncertainty after many proclamations of victory by other lawmakers about its contents.
周三，在其他立法者多次宣布该法案的内容获得胜利后，最后一刻的反对使该法案的地位变得不确定。
But President Trump stood squarely behind the bill, saying he would immediately sign it. He also said he hoped that portions of the country would be able to go back to work and school soon, and said some may be able to go back sooner than others.
但特朗普总统坚决支持该法案，表示他会立即签署。他还说，他希望这个国家的部分地区能够尽快重返工作岗位和学校，并说，有些地区可能比其他地区能够更快地重返工作岗位。
Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin said his expectation is that this bill passes tonight.
美国财政部长史蒂文·努钦
Steven Mnuchin
表示，他预计这项法案今晚将获得通过。
Disaster declarations.
灾难宣言。
President Trump said he approved major disaster declarations on Wednesday for New York, California, Washington, Iowa, Louisiana, Texas and Florida.
特朗普总统表示，他周三批准了纽约州、加利福尼亚州、华盛顿州、爱荷华州、路易斯安那州、德克萨斯州和佛罗里达州的重大灾。
Trump also said that American testing capacity is growing exponentially, although the particulars weren't clear, and that the gap continues to close between the number of people who need tests and those available for them.
特朗普还表示，美国的检测能力正在指数级增长，尽管具体情况尚不清楚，需要检测的人数和可以检测的人数之间的差距继续缩小。
Trump crowed about what he called the success of the response to the crisis and detailed what he said were shipments of ventilators to New York and other deployments of supplies around the country. New York's governor and its mayor, both Democrats, are happy, Trump said.
特朗普夸耀他所说的应对危机的成功，并详细说明了他所说的运往纽约的通风设备，以及在全国各地部署的其他物资。特朗普说，纽约州长和市长都是民主党人，他们都很高兴。
It's hard not to be happy with the job we're doing, that I can tell you, he said.
他说，我可以告诉你，我们很难不对自己的工作感到满意。
Legislation called close, but not there.
立法呼吁关闭，但并不存在。
Meanwhile, a group of Republicans said they considered the unemployment provisions in the relief legislation to be too generous. Senator Tim Scott, RSC, said Congress couldn't create a situation in which he said people would be rewarded more for being out of work than in their previous jobs.
与此同时，一些共和党人表示，他们认为救济立法中的失业条款过于慷慨。南卡罗来纳州共和党参议员蒂姆斯科特
Tim Scott
他说，国会不能制造这样一种局面，即人们失业后得到的报酬会高于他们以前的工作。
At the same time, at least one liberal senator, Vermont's Bernie Sanders, an independent who caucuses with Democrats and is running for president, said he would stop the legislation over what he called its corporate welfare if Scott and the Republicans didn't give way.
与此同时，至少有一名自由派参议员，佛蒙特州的伯尼·桑德斯
Bernie Sanders
表示，如果斯科特和共和党人不让步，他将停止这项他称之为企业福利的立法。桑德斯是一名无党派人士，与民主党人进行党团核心会议。
The late skirmishing created an awkward gap between the claims of success by many members of Congress, including Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, RCI, and the slogging that appeared to remain necessary to actually get the bill passed in both chambers and then to President Trump.
最近的小规模冲突在包括
RCI
参议院多数党领袖米奇·麦康奈尔
Mitch McConnell
在内的许多国会议员所宣称的成功与看来仍然需要的艰苦努力之间造成了一个尴尬的差距。后者实际上是为了让法案在参众两院获得通过，然后提交给
Amid pandemic crisis, U.S. wages broader messaging war with China Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin has been negotiating on his behalf with McConnell and Democrats, led in the Congress by House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer.
美国财政部长史蒂文·努钦
Steven Mnuchin
一直在代表自己与麦康奈尔和民主党人进行谈判。在众议院议长南希·佩洛西
Nancy Pelosi
和参议院少数党领袖查克·舒默
Mnuchin didn't name the Senate Republican holdouts at the White House press conference on Wednesday, but he rejected their notion that what he called enhanced unemployment would create incentives for people to quit or were too generous.
在周三的白宫新闻发布会上，马努钦没有点名参议院共和党人的反对意见，但他否认了他们的观点，即他所说的增加的失业率会刺激人们辞职，或者过于慷慨。
Work on the legislation has been slower than hoped as members of Congress wrangle over what could be the largest such support legislation in American history, one with a headline value of more than $2 trillion.
由于国会议员们争论这项可能是美国历史上规模最大的此类支持立法，这项立法的总价值超过2万亿美元，因此立法工作进展缓慢。
Trump extolled what he called the virtues of the economic rescue package and said it would ensure the United States could go up like a rocket when it emerges from the other side of the crisis.
特朗普称赞了他所说的经济救助计划的优点，并表示，这将确保美国在危机的另一面出现时，能够像火箭一样飞上天。
Crisis worsens.
危机进一步恶化。
The coronavirus disaster is worsening by the day. Cases in the United States have surpassed 60,000 with nearly 900 deaths.
这场冠状病毒灾难日益恶化，美国的病例已超过6万例，近900人死亡。
Officials in New York have warned they don't expect infections to peak for weeks or months. California and Washington state also remain badly afflicted too.
纽约的官员警告说，他们预计感染率在数周或数月内不会达到高峰。加利福尼亚州和华盛顿州的感染情况也很严重。
As the coronavirus crisis heats up, why isn't America hearing from the CDC? But the different times of arrival by the virus in various locations means that numbers of cases are increasing at different rates in unexpected new places. New Orleans, for example, has now seen about 40 deaths as the infection appeared to accelerate there.
但是病毒到达不同地点的时间不同，意味着病例数量在意想不到的新地点以不同的速度增加。例如，新奥尔良现在已经有大约40人死亡，因为感染似乎在那里加速。
Schools and businesses are closed across the nation as Americans stay home and avoid large groups in an attempt to slow the spread of the coronavirus. That has had deleterious consequences for restaurants, brick-and-mortar business and travel. Millions of people could be out of work.
为了减缓冠状病毒的传播，美国全国的学校和企业都关闭了， 因为美国人都待在家里，避免接触大规模的人群，这对餐馆、实体商店和旅游业造成了有害的后果，数百万人可能失业。
Mukin detailed the ways that programs in the relief legislation under consideration by Congress would help businesses and workers, including via direct payments, loans and other transfers from the government.
马努钦详细说明了国会正在考虑的救济立法中的项目将如何帮助企业和工人，包括通过直接付款、贷款和其他来自政府的转移支付。
Mukin said he thought the payments and programs in the bill would help the economy long for about 3 months, but hopefully this war will be won quicker, he said.
马努钦说，他认为这项法案中的支付和项目将有助于长达3个月的经济增长，但他说，希望这场战争能更快赢得胜利。
Trump responded to the same question from a reporter about how long he thought the legislation would sustain the United States. The president said he couldn't give a definitive answer, but he considered the door open to the prospect of more stimulus.
特朗普回答了一名记者提出的同样问题，即他认为这项立法能维持美国多久。奥巴马总统表示，他无法给出明确的答案，但他认为出台更多刺激措施的可能性很大。
Hopefully a long time, Trump said. We'll see. If we have to go back, we'll go back.
希望是很长一段时间，特朗普说。我们拭目以待。如果我们必须回去，我们会回去。
Trump's timeline.
特朗普的时间表。
Trump sought this week to shift the national mood from one of survival to one of transition, using Tuesday to talk up his hopes about reopening many of America's shuttered businesses soon, even as work continued fighting the contagion.
本周，特朗普试图将全国的情绪从生存转向过渡。他在周二表达了自己的希望，希望尽快重新开放许多美国已经关闭的企业。即使工作仍在继续抗击危机蔓延。
The president said in a Fox News special aired from the White House that he thought life might get back to normal by Easter.
奥巴马总统在白宫播出的福克斯新闻特别节目中说，他认为复活节之前生活可能会恢复正常。
In a subsequent show, he sketched out an imaginary scene of churches, many empty because of social distancing measures aimed at isolating the coronavirus, filled with worshippers for Easter services on April 12th.
在随后的一场展览中，他勾勒出了一个虚构的教堂场景，许多教堂因为旨在隔离这种冠状病毒的社会疏远措施而空无一人。在4月12日，这里挤满了参加复活节礼拜的信。
Trump sets Easter goal for reopening American economy. Trump's goal is well within the limits set by many public officials and businesses around the United States. Schools in many places still would be closed by the time of the scene he pictured on Easter Sunday.
特朗普的目标完全在美国各地许多政府官员和企业设定的限度之内。许多地方的学校到他在周日复活节拍摄的照片出现时仍将关闭。
The president sought to clarify later on Tuesday at a White House briefing that he'd let data and the recommendations of public health officials guide the federal recommendations about social distancing and other mitigation measures.
周二晚些时候，总统在白宫的新闻发布会上试图澄清，他将让数据和公共卫生官员的建议指导联邦政府关于社会疏远和其他缓解措施的建议。
MAP, tracking the spread of the coronavirus in the U.S., calling it a medical crisis, not a financial crisis. Trump said he wanted to reassure the American public that any decision made on loosening mitigating measures currently in place, such as social distancing, would be made using the best science, the best modeling and the best medical research there is anywhere on Earth.
特朗普称之为医学危机，而不是金融危机。他说他想让美国公众放心，任何关于放松现有缓解措施的决定，比如社会疏远，都将使用地球上任何地方最好的科学、最好的模型和最好的医学研究。
Trump say the administration would assess after next week whether or not current social distancing measures aimed at stemming the spread of the coronavirus will remain in place.
特朗普表示，政府将在下周之后评估目前旨在遏制冠状病毒传播的社会疏远措施是否会继续实施。
Wednesday marks day 10 of the 15-day period of the White House's 15 Days to Slow the Spread initiative. Trump said we'll be speaking to everybody about what follows and that it'll be an interesting period of time.
周三是白宫15天减缓传播行动的第10天，特朗普表示，我们将与所有人谈论接下来的事情，这将是一段有趣的时期。
California Governor Gavin Newsom, a Democrat, reportedly said on Wednesday that he didn't believe the end of the crisis was in sight.
据报道，加利福尼亚州州长、民主党人加文·纽瑟姆周三表示，他不相信危机的结束已经指日可待。
The president also took part in a phone call with non-profit organizations on the COVID-19 response Wednesday afternoon.
奥巴马总统还参加了周三下午与非营利组织的电话会议，讨论
COVID-19
的反应。
They have been fantastic, Trump said.
他们非常出色，特朗普说。